use that anger and that frustration to just keep pushing you to find someone who's going to listen. But also talk to your friends and tell them what you're going through, because it's so surprising how much other people are going through that's the same as you.
You just heard Melissa Peña, a working mom that has used her stubbornness to get a life-threatening health situation treated, finish her education, and get the job of her dreams. How can you fight for what's yours without getting bitter about it? Let's hear Melissa's story.
I wanted to begin our conversation, Melissa, with that stunning event that happened to you last fall, timeframe September, October. Tell the audience what it is you went through and what happened.
I guess we could start with, I have 4 kids. Honestly, a problem a lot of moms have is we put ourselves on the back burner. So, like, I don't have time to deal with this. There's ballet, there's soccer, there's, my kids graduating from high school, moving on. And while I knew that hysterectomies were a thing, they're not talked about very often. Like, for some reason, a uterus is like a special thing to be embarrassed about. Like, if I was having trouble with my lungs or my heart, that would be not a big deal to talk about.
Let's hear the real deal now. It wasn't as straightforward as you make it sound. You were in a lot of pain.
I was, and that's the crazy thing. Like, I got to the point where I was carrying heating pads around with me. I had one in my office, I had one in my purse. I would buy the ones from CVS and Walgreens that were like the stick-ons that you could, like, open up and smack on your back. I was just wearing them all the time. 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, or, sometimes 1,200 and 1,600. Like, anything I could do to just dull the pain enough so that I could function is what I was doing. Ignoring is what I was doing, or trying to.
For how long? How long was this going on?
It was probably like a full year. My car has the heated seats, and in the valley where it's always about 100 degrees, it's not really something you would normally use, but mine was always on every time I was in the car.
Oh my goodness. You talk about the doctors or people in general not wanting to talk about the reproductive organs, the uterus. Did you get any of that, like avoidance from medical personnel?
Yeah, well, you're always kind of told, well, is it just cramps, or when you get older and your hormones change, sometimes your cramps are different, and oh, you've had babies, so your body's going to change. So it was never like, let's run some tests, let's worry about this a little bit more. It was always like, well, that's just your life now, which is really hard. It's hard to hear, because you're thinking, like, this is not the life that I want, though. I'm 40, 41. Like, no thank you. I don't think anybody really took what I said too seriously.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And so now you see your friend's Facebook post, you see symptoms similar to yours, you message her. Now, how do you get this one doctor to take it seriously? Did she recommend him?
So I actually went to my OBGYN that I had seen for 17 years. My kid that he delivered is 17 years old now. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I really need you to figure this out. I'm losing my mind. I can't do this. I'm taking too much medication. I can't live like this. And I think my desperation was enough to have him say, "Okay, well, let's run some tests. Like, let's really see what's going on." So we did. We started so many tests, and yeah, it was just a lot. But it was worth it in the end. Honestly, I saw the post. I talked to my doctor 2 weeks later. I would say we ran tests for about 2 weeks, and then I had my surgery.
This hysterectomy was like 30 days in the making. I mean, from when you consulted him with your desperation plea and you're scheduled for surgery.
Yeah, it was like 2 to 3 weeks. Like, it was so fast. I was so ready, and he asked me, like, "How soon do you wanna do this?" I was like, "Tomorrow." I was ready to do it myself. I think I told my husband that at one point, like, if I start the process, someone's got to finish it, right? They're not going to send me back home if I start the process.
He's running these tests, and then this diagnosis is coming back hardened uterus. I mean, scar tissue. What is that talking about?
Yeah, well, it just felt like I had a football in my lower stomach. It was just hard.
From an outsider's point of view, I'm listening to this. I hope no one missed it, but just in case they did, you had the surgery, and then at some point, the doctor says, you know what? You also had cancer this whole time.
Yeah. It was early stages of cancer. We caught it. It did not spread. And I remember when he told me that it was post surgery, it was like a couple weeks later, and you're sitting there. I don't remember exactly, but it wasn't the one where you get the stitches out. It was the one after that. And so I was sitting down. He pulled up my results and he was like, "You did have uterine cancer." And I said, "Okay, what are we going to do about that?" And he's like, "Well, considering you no longer have a uterus, that's not going to be a problem for you." So I never fought cancer. I never went through the horrors of chemo.
Hearing your inflection too and talking to you before also about this, I'm still going to hold you to it because you did overcome cancer.
I don't want stolen valor. Like, there are some people out there who have fought, like they have been on the doorstep of death. I just commanded someone to please take my organ out, my offensive organ out. I wasn't a fight for me.
Mm.
Not in the sense of what other people have gone through.
But like what you said, for example, you said that when you went to see the doctor, you were kind of losing your mind. That was a big statement because you were at your wits' end. Knowing how level headed you are, that strikes me as desperation that you were at your wits' end. So you were suffering. So many of us can get to that point where it's just like you can't see daylight anymore. What would you say to people in those situations like you were, Melissa, that just are like in a medical situation, they're not being taken as serious as they want to be being taken?
Use that anger and that frustration to just keep pushing you to find someone who's going to listen. But also talk to your friends and tell them what you're going through, because it's so surprising how much other people are going through that's the same as you. Sometimes you have shared experience that you don't talk about. So then everybody's just kind of suffering in their back room all by themselves.
Right. Right. You found out weeks after the stitches came out, hey, a matter of fact conversation with your doctor, and he gave you like peace in the next statement, hey, we took it out. But it's like it could have easily been a different conversation going the other way.
And I remember leaving and just crying in my car, like, "Oh my God, I don't have to worry about this anymore." I think that's when it hit me, like, the amount of pain I was in, I did not even realize until I wasn't in that pain anymore.
Mm.
And then it was like, "Oh, this is what a normal body feels like."
Now you're just going around high fiving everybody in the world.
Like, "Guess what, guys?" I called my husband, I told him that too. I was like, "I don't have cancer." And he was like, "Was that a possibility?" And I feel like it's always a possibility, isn't it?
You told me about this shortly after you returned back from your leave. And that's when I was like, what? I was waiting to get back in touch with you about a project. I knew you were coming back at a certain time. So I'm like, I'm going to give her a call. And then you're like, you know what? And I was like, whoa.
I was so happy and not in pain. I was in less pain after a surgery than I was before. Like, the surgery was what we would call papitas compared to the rest of it.
That to me is like a metaphor, not minimizing this story, but I've seen in my little life that sometimes you can get in situations or people are in situations that they're just treading water is so hard. And then when they're not in that situation more, they look back and like, how did I do that? You don't seem to think like I was so strong. You just think like, how in the world?
Yeah, like, how did I function like that? And did I function well? No, probably not.
I don't know the line of demarcation necessarily, but what impressed me with you when I talked to you then was that you were like so happy go lucky, like joyful, positive. And for me to have heard later on that you were like going through a lot of pain, I wouldn't have picked it up.
Like, I have a good life. I have no complaints. So, it's just pain. I think that was a mentality, like, it's just pain, like, it's fine, just put on a heating pad, you're good. You get to do all this other great stuff. And I do, I have my dream job. I wanted that job. I said I wanted that job when I was in 7th grade. I just made myself so annoyingly available that they had to hire me.
Well, now this is the segue to the job. Tell us about the Batcave.
My bad cave. So I am the exhibits and collections coordinator for the Museum of South Texas History. I take care of all the 3D artifacts, both on display and in storage. I do the collection. So if somebody comes by to donate something to us, my job is to decide whether or not we want it, or I actively go out after things. Like recently, I did an exhibit on veterans. So I borrowed 4 different veterans collections. That's what I do. I have an office. I call it my Bat Cave. And if you're looking at the front door of the museum, on the right in the back are all the staff offices. Everybody's offices are back there. But if you go to the left and you go down this long, dark hallway, that's where my office is with the collection storage. And I have a workroom. So I jokingly call it the Bat Cave.
I can see the job is a precious, amazing thing. You are doing amazing work. But how does a 12-year-old have the wherewithal to say, this is what I want to do?
Everybody in Edinburgh, when they were in elementary and junior high, went to the Museum of South Texas History. And back then it was called Hidalgo County History Museum. Everyone went there in Edinburgh for their field trip. And I remember we went to the jail, and looking back, the jail is so tiny compared to what we have now, the campus we have now. But that was the museum. And I remember going there and walking around. And I want to say I told my busmate, Brenda Mora, I'm going to work here someday. And I'm sure she was fed up with me. And she probably told me, like, please just stop talking. But I remember just saying that, like, I'm going to work in a museum one day. This is what I want to do. I want to work in a museum.
Before you go too far, it's like, I want everyone to know that you weren't on a bus trip and then they sent you to jail. Tell us what you mean when you say the jail.
I'm so terrible. Like, I just automatically think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Okay. So the original museum was the 1910 jail. It was the first building in the city of Edinburgh, 2 stories. It's not very big. We've since added to it. I want to say in the 90s, they added an annex and expanded the museum a little bit. But yeah, so it was a jail, and then it became, like, a place where you could go and have meetings, and then, I think it was a fire station, and it's been a lot of things. The year that Beulah happened, Hurricane Beulah, so I think 1968, 1969, that week, I think it was that week, a group of people met in the jail by candlelight, pulled together about $2,000 and bought the jail from the city,
Mm.
and that was the beginning of the museum.
I still am trying to understand what a 12-year-old saw in this jail and this little annex. What did you see that said, I'm going to work here?
So I've always loved history, always. My dad bought me encyclopedias when I was very young, maybe first or second grade, and I read them. And that was my favorite thing to read. I would just sit in the living room and read through encyclopedias. I was that kid. And we went through that jail and we heard stories and we read about stories and the people who used to live here and what they did. And I think that's what caught my attention. Like, oh, there's history here, like the encyclopedias. We're just not in the encyclopedias because we're very South Texas.
I can see how a very imaginative 12-year-old now has her imagination even awoken more. So, what steps did you take to make that a reality? Because obviously you weren't hired at 12. So, then what did you do?
I took the long way around. Like, I graduated from high school. I didn't go to college right away, or I did, but I didn't really stick with it. I got married at 21, and then I had my first child at 22. And my first child has severe disabilities. She was born with an encephalocele. She's microcephalic. She has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. But she's absolutely like she's amazing. She's now 20. She'll be 21 pretty soon. Her name's Maya Jen Pele, like the soccer player. She's Maya or Mayita. She's fabulous. And I got to stay home with her. I took her to therapies. I took her to doctor's appointments. I just loved on her for like the first 13 years of my marriage because I got to stay home and they kept telling us like, "Oh, this might be the year, just make sure that, whatever." She had so many health issues for so long, but she's a fighter. She's like crazy girl. Like she's savage. And so she's made it. She'll be 21 in August and I had her and then surprise a couple months later, let's see. She was 16 months and I had Jake my second. He is now 18. He'll be 19 soon. A couple years later, I had Elijah, who is now 17. When he turned 2, I told my mom, I'm going to enroll him in daycare because I want to go back to school. I want to go to school. I want to do something more. I put him in daycare. He was a terror. He was so bad. They would call me every day. And I was just like, I told my mom, I'm going to have to drop out. Like, I can't. I love him so much, but he was that kid. Like, he was just a lot. So my mom retired from what she was doing and she started watching him for me. Started off as a business major because that's what everyone told me, like, "That's where the money's at, go into business." That is not where my brain is, though. So, I ended up switching to history and anthropology as my minor because I'm chismosa, and I need to know everything and why people are doing the things that they're doing, and it's not ever malicious. I don't need to know the gossip. I just want to know everything. Why are they there and who lived in that house before and why did they rename that street and who made that decision and I just need to know everything. And so I joke that that's why I got a minor in anthropology and probably my major in history too. I worked at the museum for a while. I interned first and then I helped with a couple of collections and then I got hired on part-time in the archives and I loved it. And so I ended up getting my master's in archival studies.
You were doing that while you were working, right?
Yes, like a crazy, crazy woman. Yeah, I did that. I had my last child about 2 weeks before my last semester of college, of my bachelor's. I gave birth, stayed home a couple weeks, and then went in. I had 1 class left, and I knew that if I did not finish that last class, I was not gonna go back. So I finished my last class. I had a newborn baby. She would come with me to class and I finished up, graduated, and then I would say a year later I started my master's.
That's a beautiful story. You can see a parallel between the Melissa who went into the doctor and said, "Hey, we're going to take care of this," and the one who finished that last class, and the one who got the master's so that she could do more at the museum. I mean, it's like they're all the same person.
Yeah, terca.
Now, for those who don't speak Spanish, define that word. Define that word.
Terca. That is someone who is just gonna do it no matter what. Like you can tell me whatever you want, I'm gonna do it anyway. I think that is how I would explain it. That's what my mom would call me all the time. Hi, terca. And so I turned that for good.
Oh, see,
Yeah,
that's being terca. They turned the word terca good.
yeah, I am terca. And what? And what are you gonna do about it? Like, yes, I am.
I'm gonna get you a T-shirt, and it's gonna say on the front, "And what?" Like with hands
And
up.
what?
And what?
Yeah.
You're like in your early 40s, you've gone through all these things, you've accomplished all these things, you had these challenges, especially the intense pain for like a year straight, but you didn't know when it was going to end. So it was like unending. What do you tell people? Because there's a lot of people who are going through things, they can't see the end of it. There's some people who have everything going well, just like you have so many things in your life that you love. And then all of a sudden something comes out left field that just smacks them. What's your life balance advice?
Everything could be worse. And I have so many good things. Like, it's so much better to focus on the good. Yes, my firstborn child was born with a genetic disorder, but it could have been worse. Like, she could have not been born at all, or she could have already left us, but we get her for 20 years. I get to be her mom for 20 years. Yes, I was in a lot of pain for a while, but like I still was able to function well enough to get some great work done. And I work with amazing people and I can't complain about that. I have my dream job. It's just easier for me to focus on all this amazing stuff going on, and we'll figure out the bad stuff later. Like, I'm
Mm.
not gonna ruin my day with focusing on the bad stuff. I'll focus on it enough to maybe get some closure for it or to get some logistics going for it, but it's been really good.
And it's going to be really good. Sounds like it.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving where I work and like the projection that we're going and some of the work we're putting out and the creative people I get to work with. It's just really good. And I love it. Like we're taking the museum up to a different level, I feel like. And during the pandemic, when everything was just with this craziness, we figured things out. We just did things. We did so much good work. We have some good momentum.
You got a good vibe about you. I'm sure you've been told that many times.
Yeah, I'm fun.
For those folks out there who are going through pain right now, and it's kind of they're kind of just working through it and popping Advils and things because they got to get through their day. I hope that they'll slow down like you did and say, hey, I got to get this checked out so that they can be a survivor. Parents of wonderful children like Maya, I hope they can hear you and see how you are looking so much on the positive side. Well, I'm sure your husband
Yeah.
is so happy to have your positive spirit in the home and your coworkers too, even though you're in the back cave.
They don't get to be away from me. I go bother everyone. Don't worry about that. I make my rounds. I make my rounds.
I should not have doubted that. I should not have doubted that. As we wrap up, what final words do you have to leave with all your new fans now and your new followers? How can they reach you and contact you, first of all?
Probably through my museum email, which is mjpena@mosthistory.org. But look us up online. Our website's amazing. Pamela Morales is in charge of that, and she's a rock star. So it's mosthistory.org. We have a Facebook and Instagram and all of the social medias. I'm always putting up a new exhibit. Last year I did 13 of them. This year I'm only doing 8, possibly 9. We'll see. We're pretty visible.
So now you have the final word. We have a lot of reverence for what you have to say because you have been so strong through so many things. So tell us direct, what do we need to hear?
Be excited about everything. If you wake up excited in the morning, like, oh my God, I get to go to work today and I get to work on this project and I get to meet with these people. Even if those people are not your cup of tea, you're getting to work with them anyway, and they're going to bring something to the table. You're going to bring something to the table. Just wake up excited, I think. Be your own fan.